So there's three different ways that you can sync contacts from MailChimp. Um, Whether or not, or I guess we'll use it for two ways. I guess there's three, but we don't use leads. So you can sync contacts, and that you can sync based off of any details on a contact record. So their address or donor history, ownership, what region they're a part of, age, employer, really, and anything on a contact record that we have. That would be for like actual donors, and then we have everything for students, and we have things for chapter members. So there's a lot of different things that we can
Yeah.
segment on the contact record. But if it's not on the contact record, the way that you would sync isn't a direct sync like I'm going to show you here via the query, but it's from a campaign member. So you can either do that by creating a campaign and importing a list directly into MailChimp, or you can set up one of these queries to say any person that's a part of this campaign, then add them to this segment or list or whatever you have set up via that query or sync. And
Okay.
from that you can say like you could do like related objects for a contact. So you could say like, I want all contacts that have been on a trek this year, or contacts that have been on a trek to Nicaragua in the last 2 years, or whatever those different queries are. You can do that via a campaign and adding them to a campaign and then syncing all the members of that campaign. And I'll show you how you can do that as well.
Okay. I guess I'd want to understand too, like how I would know or how I would figure out what what fields I could pull from a contact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So let's go into that. So a contact, we have a chapter member, which is either a student or a parent of the chapter or a staff advisor. Default are all donors. Programs would be our USP students. Staff is all staff, both international and here in the US. And then Stay Classy are online donors. And a lot of times they'll come in first through Stay Classy, but then they'll attend an event, or they'll be a part of a chapter, or they'll go on Trek. And so their record type will change. But all these different record types have different fields based off of the type of individual they are. So chapter member records have chapter specific fields. Programs, they have the USP student specific fields. All the default and Stay Classy ones, they have the donor specific fields on them. So if we look at one, for example, yeah, this one's a little outdated. This is just a low level donor. They've only given $250. But this is an example of a donor record. We have just their basic details, prospect levels. So if you wanted to segment based off of the donor level, what level they're at, and then in a region, you could definitely do that based off of what level they're at and who the owner is of that contact.
Okay, so this is a contact record type default.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so we don't have, I guess, donor versus non-donor. There would be certain
fields on the contact record that would tell that.
But those fields are because it's a default contact record type. Those fields are there, but if they haven't donated, they're just blank.
Right.
Okay.
So you could look at total gifts and use that as an example. So where there might be a default contact but not a donor is maybe they filled out paperwork for Trek, or they attended an event but didn't donate anything. That could be an example where they have a contact record but aren't a donor. These fields are outdated. I'm going to remove those. These ones are also outdated.
When you say they're outdated, like what if I were to try to use those for a query, what would happen?
It would pull up, but it would probably only do one sync because new contacts wouldn't be added with data in those fields anymore. All the Trek paperwork's in the Trek group and Trek participant objects. Um, volunteer information, that's only for students, so that wouldn't be there. So yeah, I mean, you could use them, but really nothing would come up after that first sync. Just for a regular donor, just a standard donor or event attendee or Trek participant, you're gonna have contact information, address, and then if they've become like an official donor, and this is if the development team continues to do this, but they have to list the prospect level, prospect type, so where they're at, and then what part of the journey they're on.
Yeah, how is that? Is that happening?
Um, I don't know as much for new contacts as or new donors if they're keeping up on it. But I do know as of like a month and a half ago, their lists were all up to date.
So going back to
yeah,
like old.
and I would say even with like the events with Chicago and Bay Area, they were doing it for that too. And I know Michelle's really staying up on it, and I know her DDs will be doing it. But I guess I can't say what's happening on the East Coast because there's no DD,
Yeah.
and Jay's definitely doing it on the West Coast.
Okay.
And chapters are doing it as well. They just have a little bit different format. So yeah, you can pull any of these fields.
Are chapters doing it with donors or with like school, like new chapter
Yeah,
process?
new chapters themselves.
Okay. Yeah,
They
because
are.
I've seen that, but I hadn't seen like something that was for donors, so
Yep.
or for fundraisers. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had tried to do it a dashboard earlier in the year, but no one paid attention to it, so it just kind of fell off with the development team. Um, but they're actually required. So if they come in and look at one of these, so say if I want to click on one of these and edit it and try to save without doing that, it would say those are required.
Oh, okay.
So if they want to make any edits and save it to one of their donor records, they have to do that.
Okay. Cool.
So that I mean that I guess that's assuming that they'll be editing their contact records. They should be. They definitely should be, and will be wanting to like update their addresses or phone numbers or email addresses or anything like that. If they do that, they should have to update their level and type in Journey.
Got it. Okay.
So you have those on a just general donor record. We can look at a staff record. But again, this just depends if this will stay up to date or not. So I go in and make the changes pretty like once a week if there's any staffing updates. So I have their office, their title and department, and their supervisor listed for each staff member. Whether most of the international staff that we don't have a supervisor listed, but for all the U.S. based staff, I have their supervisor listed in those details. So I don't know. You might be able to do a segment based off of staff and what office they're listed in or what department they're a part of. That could be an example.
Okay.
Chapter members. So it's pretty similar to the general donor. It's just kind of cleaned up a little bit. But then again, it's not really anything too in depth on here yet, other than some of their pre-check information, what chapter they're a part of, whether or not they've given gifts. But then again, it's not too in depth.
Do we have anything here for either for chapter or other donors that indicates like a region?
Yes. Owner.
Like this, Aaron would
Yeah.
Aaron's name as the contact donor would indicate that someone is west and south. But like, is there anything that says like this is?
No, we tried putting region on there, but it just kind of fell off. No one stayed up on it, and then you'd have controversy over some of the major donors. Like they're in Seattle, but they give to Connecticut to the gala, and so we never really got that squared away. But ownership is up to
Uh-huh.
date, and every gift that's made is updates who the owner is. So if this person made a gift to a chapter campaign and that chapter campaign was one of Aaron's chapters, then Aaron would be the donor. Or the same thing for a Trek. If an individual gave a gift to one of Skylar's campaigns, then Skylar would be the owner of that contact.
Okay.
So you can do that. Aaron, Jen, and Tom are chapters. Siobhan and Jay are San Francisco.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just go down the list like that for what region the development staff is a part of.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
So one way I can
And at
imagine,
the end of the day, like most of these people have city and state. So
right? They have
if for
address.
any type of geo targeting, we can always use that
Yep,
in
exactly.
international.
And then of course, like so, every campaign or every contact has specific things about them, but we left the contact records pretty basic, and then it's all about their relationships. Did they attend an event, and that would be in the campaign history. Did they go on Trek? Then they would have a Trek participant form. If they donated to a Trek, then that would be in their campaign and say what Trek they donated to. And I can show you how to pull reports on getting those specific types of donors out there, or individuals or constituents or students, whatever you want to look at. One example, though, for how we could build on this and going with the idea you had on form assembly last week was your different newsletter forms or different contact forms on the website. So say you had a chapter lead form, then we could have a field that just says lead, where it came from, and then you'd have the page on the website for whatever form they filled out. So if you had like a lead form on just the general page, then you could have that being like, and I'm not sure where all of them are at. We can look, but say if you had like an interest form on US programs, or you had one for a region specific page, so like Chicago or Detroit, and you had people fill out that contact form on that page, then you could kind of use that as like a segmentation or interest as well to see where they signed up on the website, and that could feed them into a list on MailChimp. So if you had, I think we had, the corporate lead. So you wouldn't necessarily have to put anything on here to say, like, tell them to self-register or like say where they're from or what they're interested in, but by where you put this up on the website, or what you have the call to action on the form, then on the back end on the connector, that's where we can fill in like Chicago or Detroit or whatever the interest is for whatever page you're on. So when that contact gets created or updated, we could just have a field that says like web lead, and then it says what segment they're a part of, or they could be a part of multiple segments too if they filled out multiple forms as well. So that could be just an idea of how you could use segmentation on a contact record via new leads or new updates from web forms.
Yeah. So what would be, so like right now, like I showed you last week, the way we're capturing that is like, we have like one web lead form that's just on multiple pages.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all the same form, and like just one of the things that's a Gravity Forms form, and one of the things that it can just capture is the URL. So we're capturing the URL. We have it in a field there, but I guess so. If we're gonna, like, we talked about creating a separate form assembly form for each of those pages to make them essentially like separate lead forms, right? Yep. So what would be the step, like what would we need to do to create that field here in Salesforce?
So you would go into view fields on a contact record. And I think what we would call it is just web lead. I'm guessing that would be a good.
Sure.
Then we can do a pick list. Do you want there to be multiple options on there? So say they fill out a lead form on another page, and do you want them to be able to have multiple options for where they came from? So like if they filled out the Chicago form, but then came back and filled out the U.S. programs form on another page. Not that they would ever do
I
that.
would like, yeah, I don't think we need to have multiple, but if they came back, I'd like to switch them to U.S. programs. So
Okay.
like,
so right now, what pages are they on?
right now it's on the home page. It's on the USP page and the IP page. I've got a list of these.
And I can take all the ones from that have come in already, and just via those URLs, I can do a mass update on this and designate which ones that they came from.
Okay.
So that you can see it in action.
Yeah. Let me just confirm then. So you would just need those pages and the URLs.
I would just need their email address for what they filled out on the form, and then what the URL is. And I would just do a substitute. Okay. So if the URL here said the home page, I would just substitute home in for that URL. And if it was from the USP page, yeah, and go down the list.
Okay. So do you want me to just get you, like if I just got you an Excel sheet with
all the URLs,
leads that have signed up through the web with all their URLs?
Yep, all the leads, and then whether it's in that same document, just the URLs, or if you want to put it in an email, if it's only like 5 different URLs or whatever, and then I'll update this field.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
So then, since we want this to be all types of individuals, no matter where they come from, we'll just put it on every single contact record type. Just like if they did come from the website, we would know where they came from, regardless of who they are, what they represent, I guess. So then when
what about with donation?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to show you how we would do that query.
Okay. Great.
So now that we have that field, now we can just do a query that sets it up. And once we put in, so then you can put in you would create the list in MailChimp first for what you want them to be on. Maybe you'd call it web leads, or maybe based off of where they came from, they will automatically go into one of these lists. So maybe it's like if they click USP, they would go to the US dropout crisis list, and maybe the global poverty. Yeah, but you could create your own ones too. It doesn't have to be these ones that are on there now.
Okay. I mean, most likely. So like, one of the things that we like have to be careful about with MailChimp is because since MailChimp will charge you multiple times for the same email address on that's on multiple lists. Trying to keep the list, like right now, like a lot of those are like test lists and stuff like that, and just like things that need to be archived that you see here. But most of our contacts live on that buildOn news list. So like what I would probably want to do with this is within the buildOn news list, create a segment for these people. So I guess we would do segment like add segment and do one called web leads.
Well, you could do that, or you could set these queries up to feed into one of these segments too. So if it was a home page and they have an address of Connecticut, then they would go into the Connecticut one, or whatever those rules are that you set up. So it could be these ones that already exist, or you could create new ones too.
Okay.
So then once you can either click which segments you want it to populate, or you can create new ones. So if we put in web homepage or something like that, that could be one. So now we go to next. And then we choose our contact record. And then we say, still loading. So then we can do our segments off of that. So web lead home, if that's what segment we are going into. And then if you even want to get more specific, you could do mailing address details. So you could do mailing state equals CT, or like if that's what your segment was, if it was home and Connecticut from the web, then that's how you would do it.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that might not be like a heavy list. That one might not get like hundreds of new contacts in the list, but if you're sending out a very specific message, you can get really specific on these. If if you're targeting a really specific issue, like if it's a certain service project in a certain part of Chicago, you could do that via these lists. And anytime you have a service project and you're doing a marketing piece on that, then you'll want to include those specific people. And it may only be 100 or 200 people, but then you're targeting that really specific group, and they're engaged in part of that message.
Right.
So I don't think there's a limit on number of queries you can do like that. I think you can do as many as you want, and you can also, you can delete old ones in there too if you don't use them anymore. It looks like there's still some going. You had the New York, non-USP, Illinois, California. Yeah.
Which ones are those? Could you go back to that?
Yeah. So you've added 17 this way. Let's look at these queries though, just to make sure they're. Oh, yep. So you have a campaign that equals MailChimp contacts.
And how many does it show in there?
10,898.
So what's the query that's creating those?
That's just a campaign member, so no one's being added anymore. It's only members of that campaign. And I think this was one we did last summer. I think we bulk added a bunch of contacts from Salesforce to MailChimp that were part of the campaign. As far as live ones go, you have this one. and you're still mapping people that way via
Yeah.
those fields.
Okay. That's the one I was.
Yeah,
That's the one I thought we were looking at, but that one looks right.
these are older ones. It looks like, yeah, you did a house file one on, or no, that was last run on. It's still running them, but you did that on last summer. All these were done last summer, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So the queries are great for just those smaller segmented lists. So you have your general news list here, and it's still adding in. But when you get more specific, you can do the actual queries. So one thing to note on there, we'll do the news again, are those different types. So again, we never use leads, so you don't want to click that box. Maybe the new admin will start using leads, but I don't really, there's no use for it right now. Contacts would be anytime a contact is created or edited and the criteria that you have in the query meets that contact record. So say you have the query saying, I want all new web contacts that are from Chicago. Anytime a web contact comes in or is created and fits that criteria or that query, it'll get added to that list or to that segmentation. But if you do a campaign member, so say you just want to add everyone that's a part of a certain campaign. Campaign members don't get added to campaigns automatically. Campaign members would be maybe if you want to do like a one-time segmentation and you can't get to that segmentation just based off of a contact record, a field on a contact record, you need to go deeper and do a campaign member or pull a report and add all those contacts as members of a campaign. So I would recommend trying to do them all via the contacts so you don't have to come back and do an update anytime you want to add in more. But I'll show you how to do a campaign member one.
Okay.
Just you need to do that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So this is going back to this. These are campaigns or campaign members. So you can create any campaign that you want anytime. Maybe it's just like you want to create one for a certain segment or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be like a very in-depth record. It can be really simple. Like this one, all we're calling is MailChimp contacts. It's active. We just put the type in as email, and then we add a ton of members to it in order to send out a mailing or add them to MailChimp. So when you have members in a campaign, you can send out a mass email from Salesforce to all members of that campaign as well. So if you want to just create a report though of people that you want to add to a campaign, what you're going to need to do is that report, the base object needs to be a contact record. So it couldn't be show me Trek groups with contacts. It needs to be contacts with, and I'll show you what that looks like here in these reports. So you'll go into reports and you'll type in contacts. So it can either be just a general contacts report where contacts is first. And there's a lot of them. Here's an example of, we can do one with a Trek group. So you might not be able to get just from the contact record details about whether or not, like which Trek they went on, what were the details of that Trek, all those different things. But when you do this report where you're looking at the contract record as the base, but you're looking at any records that have a relationship of being a part of a Trek group as a Trek participant. So that's what that sentence is basically saying there. So when you're in this report, you're going to want to set up the filters to show all contacts. And then you can start working on your filters to get your targeted group. So really easily what you can do is maybe you have a request from a development staff to send out something from MailChimp for a Trek group, for like a very specific Trek group. What you can do is just come into this report and actually put in that Trek group name. So let's go to a Trek group record just to show you what that looks like. So yeah, here's one that already happened. They didn't fill out any participant records. There we go. And so just from this, you could run the report, and if you had created a campaign called GECAS participants, you could add them to that campaign. And then from your query, you could come here and say, oh, I want everyone that's a part of that campaign.
Okay.
But you could do that by, we go back to this. You don't have to just focus on a specific Trek though. And that's why there's so many different options here, because this is just one object relationship in Salesforce. This is the very small group. Out of all of our contacts or donors, it's only a pretty small group that actually go on a track. But that's not to say that there isn't a good segment there. So you could do, I want to look at all the Trek participants that go to Malawi. And let's look at the year. (2015). And we'll say that the email is not blank, so we don't get any blank emails there. So here we got all the different Trek groups that are going to Malawi this year, and the contacts that participants actually have valid email addresses. So you've got 10 to 15 participants per Trek. So then you could just add them to a campaign. This could be Malawi 2015 Trek participants, and that could be a targeted email or a certain campaign that you got to those specific individuals. So you couldn't get that from a contact record, but you could get that from a contact report, adding them to a campaign. So that might be, an example of a use case for this would be, you want to send a message out to, maybe the Malawi country director wants to send out a specific message, and you do some marketing around it, and you send it out twice a year. So when you're sending one out, you can do this report and click add to campaign. And then maybe 6 months later, you want to do it again, but more Treks have gone, there's more participants. All you have to do is save this report, and to refresh that list and to add them to your campaign that you want to send marketing pieces out to, you just come back to that report and hit add to campaign, and it'll add all those new members. It won't add duplicates, but it'll just add all those new members to that report. So we'll save this one as an example. So you would add to the campaign that you've created, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to target it. And then when you come back, just do the exact same thing. It'll be smart enough to not create the duplicates or update ones that are already in there if there's any new information or a new email address or something like that.
Okay.
So then when you go into here, you just click campaign members and then the campaign name right here is this first one. And then you just put in that campaign that you are looking for to add them to. So maybe it's Malawi 2015 and hit next step and it'll sync from there. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
So I saved this report just in the unfiled folders list. So if you wanted to get to it again or if you want to change it. So this is Malawi 2015. We could create one for another country and you just go in and swap out the country name. So we could do Haiti, or let's start down the list, do Burkina. And then you have that one. So if you have a base report with filters like this, I guess this is going a little bit into reports, but if you want to take a report and just edit some of the details on there to get a different group up there or different data or whatever, you can do that. And when you save it, just click save as and then save it as something new, and then that old version will still be there. But if you click save, it'll update that previous report with the new data that you've put in there. So the other piece of this, and I would recommend just doing it all via the sync just so you get in the hang of it and doing it. You can just export into Excel and then go into MailChimp and upload that list like we've done before. But I would recommend just going and doing it, adding it to a campaign, and then syncing that campaign via the sync. And that just kind of gets you in the hang of it. And then eventually maybe you can train other people to do that too. If you wanted them to target a specific list or specific group, or maybe they created a campaign of their own and they're just trying to get the right people into it for a mailing list. That's all they have to do is just create a campaign that will house all the contacts and then add those contacts in via a report, and then set that up via the sync. And anytime they add new members to that report or to that campaign, then it'll sync via the sync to MailChimp into their segment that they have set up.
Got it. Got it. Before I forget, what so like one of the things that we like, basic things that we want to segment is you know, broadly defined, like what interest of buildOn's work somebody is interested in. So one of the ways we can do that, right, is with, you know, that web form indicator.
Yep.
So, you know, we've got some pages that are general, we've got some pages that are US programs, and we've got some pages that are international program oriented. So that's there. But I'm thinking about someone who is a lead that's created as a donor through Classy. How would I be able to, or Classy or any other way, like how would I be able to tell that someone who's donated is an IP, USP, or just general donor?
Yeah, that's a good point. Unfortunately, we never got to the point where we had that listed directly on a contact record. And if it was, then you could just do a sync, just like that web lead field. If it has a certain piece of data in it, then you can do it via that query and just do it from the contact record, and that's easy. The other way to do it is by, what campaigns they're donating to. So this individual has donated to this Moss Adams 2015 Trek. So you would set up a as just as a nature of being in that campaign, then that's like they're supporting, whatever that trek, the Moss Adams trek, that would be a ambassador trek to, I think they're going to Malawi. Yeah, they're going to Malawi. So that would be, I don't know. I guess that by the nature of them being in that campaign, it kind of says a lot of things. It says they're a California donor. It says that they support ambassador treks. It says they're interested in Malawi. So just by that, I mean, you can get a lot of different segmentations out of it. And you can do that from a campaign report, just like I showed you. So just by being in this campaign, let's look at an example. So this is just a donation report. So it shows all the different donations. But when someone donates to a campaign, and I'll show you what this looks like. So this was a $250 donation to actually that was not processed yet. Let's look at another one. So this individual gave a $1,000 donation to a Trek group that's going to Burkina. So we can look at his donor history. We see he's from New York. He's donated.
And you're seeing that just from the Trek name, right?
Yeah, yep. So it looks like he's a GE employee. But yeah, that's just from the Trek name. And so anytime he donates, then he's going to be a part of that campaign. And so you can set up a report that looks for those certain types of donors, ones that give to USP or ones that give to an IP specific page, ones that give to a certain type of track, a certain country. You can set up all those reports are there. And then all you'd have to do is add them to a campaign. And so you can do that via reporting, or if you create a campaign, let's look at a campaign. So here, this campaign has 4 donations, but it also has all the different team members in there. So anyone that donates is going to be a member of this campaign. Anyone that is on that team is going to be a member of that campaign. But I guess I'm rambling a little bit, but you can add in members a couple different ways. You can add them in from here by just doing some queries, just like on the MailChimp setup, and find members. And anytime one gets added via that criteria, it'll get added to the campaign. Or you can do it via a report like I just showed you before. So let's look at a donor report to show you an example. So again, it's the contacts with. So contact is the main object, and it has to be that sort of report in order to add them to a campaign. Or I'll show you another different way too that you can do it, just kind of cheating the system and be able to get anyone in. But from the native way of Salesforce, it needs to be this sort of sentence: contacts with, and then the object that it's a part of. So we'll say. So we could say the primary campaign source contains IP. And in this case, you may want to look up the actual campaign name first. So then we put it in the filter, contains IP, or the campaign says international programs. And that's going to get you your very specific IP donors. Oops, I don't know what I put in that. Email, you put the email in there, and then again, we can do not equal to blank, and then opt out equals false. So then we can even get even more specific and do mailing state. So then we have IP donors. And then all you have to do is add them to a campaign. So in some cases, you might get where you've pulled a report and it has a contact in it, but it doesn't have that little button here at the end. So some easy ways to get around that is if they have contacts in the report, you can do it, add them to a campaign a couple different ways. You can put in their contact ID, or you can use their email. So then all we have to do is hit export. We'll do CSV. And then we have our file here. And then you go into the actual campaign that you want to add them to. I won't actually add any right now, but just to give you an example. So then you go into add members, import file. And then you go in and choose that file. And then you just map. And that's why I say the record ID is a really easy one to do. So then you can just map. It'll say where's that record ID in that file that you're uploading, and then you just select that, and then hit next, and then that's it. And then import, and then they'll be added to your campaign.
Okay.
So as long as you have that as an option, either the ID or email address, it doesn't matter it can be like a very clunky report, but it's getting the data that you want. And you get to the end of the report and there's no button for add to campaign. You can kind of just do that workaround and add people that way as well.
Got it.
So actually, I'll save this report for you just so you can easily swap out the types of donors. So you can put in specific campaign names there. You can put details that are on the campaign. You can put details that are on the donor record. So location, state, address, those sort of details. But this one's good because we already have it set up only to show people that have a valid email address and ones that haven't opted out. And then you can just put in what the campaign is. So another example, I'll save this one just as IP donor email list. But another example could be like maybe you get a request from chapters for Abington, which is a chapter name. It's a Pennsylvania school, so most of the donors are out of Pennsylvania. So that's just another example. All of those have Abington in the name for the campaign. So you could send out a mass email that way. So you have your queries, which you can do just basic from the contact record. Anytime anyone's added to Salesforce via that into a contact record and it meets your query standards there, it'll get added automatically, and it does that every hour. So that's option number one. Option number two is adding them via a campaign, and your campaign has add to campaign, or your report has add the campaign on it, and you can add them to campaign. The third way is you create your campaign and you create your report, but there's no button there, and you just export and then go into the campaign and say import new members via the import file.
Okay, cool. Why is the button sometimes not there?
It depends. It's all about the relationship with the object. And that report was contacts with donations. But I think on that report, since we're using the nonprofit starter pack, donations take several different forms. So it's just not one standard object on that one. It's matching gifts. It's gifts that are listed as pledges. A lot of different things that kind of mess that one up. But if it's just like a standard, very straightforward object like that other one we did was contacts with Trek participants, the Trek participant is only one object. It's not multiple different objects that are, share a similar name, like an opportunity or a donation would in that case. So it's not the clearest, but it's all about, is it a really straightforward relationship or not?
Yeah. Okay.
And you can do one-offs too. You don't have to do it via a report. But say you're coming across a contact and you just see this individual and they seem like it's a good fit, and you don't see that they have the criteria that will target that query, or they're not part of a campaign, or they haven't donated to something. You can easily just add someone to a campaign, and if you know that campaign is set up on one of those queries, then it'll pull them in automatically once you add them. So the integration itself is pretty straightforward. It's not too complex. The complexity comes about, your different queries you set up, how targeted you want to get them, how often you need to go in and update them, whether or not it's going to happen automatically because that data is held on the contact record, or if it's you having to go in and add them to a campaign, or creating a campaign based off of certain criteria to get people into a certain segmented group or list.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure it'll make more sense when I get into it, but I'm still trying to get my head around that a little bit.
And there's this article where it kind of explains it a little bit, just the query tool. It doesn't talk about reporting at all, but it explains the query options.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at that.